the camera before? You hear me, Indira? Have you used the camera before?
Sorry, my phone wasn't unmuting. Yes, I have, but not extensively. Just like for work videos and stuff.
All right, cool. All right, so we might have to start from the beginning. Morgan, were you in the workshop last class? If you can hear me, Morgan Blackwell.
Yeah, I think I might have went to the wrong class last class, so I don't think so. Was it the tripods or no?
No, we did an exposure workshop last class via Zoom. So you might not have.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
All right, cool. All right, well, we're just gonna continue that workshop, but we might have to back up for you and Indira. Um, so let's move through that really quickly. And what's your name again? What is it? Shim Zero. All right, cool. You go by Shim for short or no shorts?
I don't like it.
Okay.
Because hieroglyph, right?
Yeah.
Hieroglyph
Yeah.
is hieroglyph. So Shemzeru, and Shems are kind of different.
Different names.
Shemzeru refers to what my name is associated towards.
Okay.
Shems doesn't, and Shem is Jewish.
Gotcha. All right. All right, cool. Yep.
Although I said all of that.
All
Right?
Uh,
Now you can come.
Shims. Okay. All right, cool. I got the other.
If you can remember Shemzeru, I appreciate
All right, I got you.
Class. So with all this weather stuff that's keep happening, it gets a little confusing on what's safe and not. But Cal has been flexible. I wanted to give you an opportunity to put your hands on the camera, but also I didn't want to make it to where you felt uncomfortable getting on set. But Cal, if I'm correct, you also offer some type of tutelage outside of this particular presentation that you do here. Is that correct? I feel like you've done
Sure.
it before, and they can also take advantage of that.
Yeah, yeah. So I do have a cinematography cohort, which is pretty much just a collective of students that I am training one-on-one with camera operation and students that have went through that training. I'm allowing them to check out equipment more often, and I'm also sending them out on shoots regularly. They don't have to be an intern or anything with us, but they want to shoot, so I'm giving them the opportunity to do so in one-on-one training. So if you are interested in really being a DP or a cinematographer, definitely you can meet with me and we'll start that process.
Thank you. I was thinking, Indira, especially those, and also those who may have missed it last week, and it's no fault of your own, just letting you know that's an option so you can expand upon as well.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna have to review for those of you that missed it. So if you were in class, it's time for you to prove that you were paying attention. All right, so Morgan and Dara, whenever we pick up a camera, our goal is to get a great shot, right? Now, what makes a great shot is great lighting, right? So we don't want our shot to be too dark. We don't want our shot to be too bright. We want it perfectly exposed. So the first thing that you need to understand is exposure. Justin, can you hear me?
Yes, I
Justin?
can hear you.
All right, Justin, can you tell us what exposure is?
Exposure is how much light is entered into the camera.
All right, cool. Exposure. All right, cool. Justin said how much light enters the camera. And Dara and Morgan, can you see my uh board behind me?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so we running it through it for you guys, so pay attention, okay? All right, exposure. Way to summarize it is exposure is going to be the overall lighting of your shot. Okay, so just memorize that. Exposure is going to be the overall lighting of your shot. So Derek, if I hand you a camera and you take a picture and I say this shot is underexposed, what am I saying, Derek?
It's too dark or is not enough light.
Okay, cool. All right. Justin, if I give you a camera and I have you shoot some B-roll and I say this one shot is too bright, what am I saying? It's what?
Overexposed.
It's overexposed, okay? So in Dara and Morgan, I'm giving you guys, hey, what's your name again? Ananda. Okay. All right, cool. We are running through our workshop really quick for those that missed it last week. Okay. So in Dara and Morgan, exposure is the overall lighting of our shot. If your shot is too dark, that means it's underexposed. If your shot is too bright, that means it's overexposed. So I'm giving you the terminology so that you can communicate, and understand cinematography. Okay. So overexposed, underexposed, exposure. So those are the first couple of terms that you're going to be memorizing. Okay. All right. So whenever we pick up our camera, before we even get into exposure, specifically when we're talking about video, we have to decide something. Ananda, do you remember what's the first thing we need to decide when we're picking up our camera and we're doing video? Before our exposure, what do we need to set? No cheating, no cheating. What's your name again?
Kingston.
Kingston. All right. What's the first thing that we set before we even get into our exposure? Frames per second. Okay, cool. FPS, frames per second. Or frame rate.
Hey Cal, can you tilt the camera down to your
Okay.
your screen?
Okay.
Because we can, yeah, all that's perfect right there. I don't know if it's, yeah, that's perfect. We can see all
I
that.
probably need to like stand like over here or something.
Oh, you're fine. We can see that screen. That's great.
All right. So frame rate or FPS, which is your frames per second. All right, cool. Frame rate or frames per second. Shimzero, can you dive a little bit deeper into frame rate? Like what is it?
How fast, slow, the picture will come out based upon
Mhm.
24.
Mhm.
Numbers. I remember 24 blank and 60.
Okay, that's yeah. The, you're right, you're right. All right, so in 1 second, yes. In 1 second, how many frames is our camera, how many pictures is our camera taking? Okay, so if you think about a flip book, in 1 second, so for one flip book, you might have a book that's 24 pages, and that's going to give you a certain look and feel when you flip through it. You might have another book that is 60 pages, and when you flip through it, the motion and the feel of it is going to be different. So before, specifically with video, we're talking about, not photography. With video, before we set our exposure, before we get our lighting correct, we want to make sure we set our frame rate or our FPS. Does that make sense, Morgan and Dara?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So to even simplify it even more, and Dara, I see you have an iPhone. Morgan, do you have an iPhone?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you go to your camera app and you go to video, what is it what does it give you at the top right? Should be some numbers.
In the camera app?
Yep. In the camera app, when you go to video, I
Okay.
believe it's the top right, if I'm not mistaken.
The HD or the 30 frames per second?
Yep. So that's your frame rate right there.
Okay.
So Morgan, what different frame rates does your iPhone allow you to shoot at?
It says 24, 30, and 60.
Okay, 24, 30, and 60. All right, cool. So those are three different frame rates that you can shoot with, and you have to decide which one. Morgan and Dara, have you ever changed the frame rate on your iPhone camera?
Yeah, I have
Why?
to get a better quality.
Okay, get better quality. So each of these frame rates gives your footage a different look and feel. That's why we have to decide which what frame rate we're using first. Okay. Kingston, why would we want to shoot with a frame rate of 24 frames per second?
That's the most cinematic thing. So, and then those guys gonna be a little slower and you can kind of create a bit better.
Okay, cool. Kingston said that we would shoot with 24 frames per second if we are trying to achieve a cinematic look and feel. 24 frames per second gives you a cinematic look and feel. So for your short films and your feature films, most likely you're going to be shooting at 24 frames per second. That's going to give you the most movie-like look and feel in terms of the motion. Okay. So in Swan, most of your assignments are going to be in 24 when you're doing your short films and whatnot. Okay. Shim Zero, why would we shoot at 30 frames per second? Mm-hmm. Yep. So Shim Zero said that we would shoot at 30 if we want a more reality look and feel. So reality TV and a lot of TV shows are shot in 30 frames per second. The motion and look and feel of 30 frames per second looks like reality TV. It looks more realistic. It looks more live. Okay. So if you're shooting a documentary and you want your footage to look like, okay, this is really happening in the moment, you might shoot 30. If you're shooting maybe an event recap video, all right, you're at a party and you're shooting, footage for you're shooting B-roll for the event recap. You might shoot at 30 because you want it to look like, okay, this was a real life event that was happening, not a movie. Okay. And Dara and Morgan, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we went through 24, which is that cinematic look and feel. Short films, feature films, anything that you want to look like a movie, it's great to use 24. That's going to be the standard. 30 is going to be more live, more reality TV, more social media. Okay. And then 60. Why would we shoot 60, Ananda?
Um, you know, what is the third one? So if it's
Mhm.
faster than documentary,
Mhm.
so maybe like something in sports.
Sports.
Mhm.
Exactly. So the bigger the number, the faster the frame rate. So this is 24 frames in 1 second. This is 30 frames in 1 second. This is 60 frames in 1 second. So think of the flip book analogy. If we have a flip book that is 24 pages and we flip through it, the motion is going to look a certain way. If we have a 30-page flip book and we flip through it, the motion is going to look a certain way. If we have a 60-page book, the motion is going to look very different as well. And Ananda said that we would shoot 60 frames per second specifically for sports. Kingston, why would we shoot 60 for sports?
You can capture most stuff like slow-mo, another thing
Mhm.
like that. You want to really capture a moment.
Yep.
Like want to go on a replay, you be able to.
We have 60 pages to work with the flip book analogy to capture motion. So the example I used last week is if we're watching LeBron James run down the court and dunk. We want to see as much motion as possible, right? So the more frames we have in that 1 second, the more clear and crisp the motion is going to look. Okay. And I think and Dara said that she switched to 30 because the quality looked better. It's not necessarily that the quality looked better, it's just that it look more real, look more real. So if 30 looks real, 60 looks hyper real. So most sports and live events is going to be 60, okay, if not 30. And Kingston also said that we would shoot 60 for slow motion. So if you want to achieve slow motion, maybe you're doing a music video or maybe you're shooting B-roll for your short film, you have to shoot at a faster frame rate. Fast meaning at least 60 frames per second. And then what you're going to do in post, or your camera might do it for you, you're going to shoot in 60 and you're going to slow it down to 24 frames per second. Okay. So if you ever want to achieve slow motion, shoot at a faster frame rate and then slow it down to either 30 or 24. Does that make sense? Indira and Morgan?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So, Indira, on your phone, when you go to the camera and you go to shoot slow motion, what frame rate frame rate options does it give you?
Let me check. You said slow motion.
Yeah.
It gives me 120.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
yeah.
Okay. So for slow motion, you can shoot 60 or you can shoot 120 or anything faster than that. So an example I showed last week was the NBA Phantom Cam, and that camera shoots 1,000 frames per second. So that's crazy, crazy, super slow motion. Okay. So 60 is fine for slow motion. 120 is even slower. Anything faster than that is going to achieve a very buttery, smooth, slow motion look and feel. Okay. All right. So we chose our frame rate. Let me just review. Olatunji, you there?
Yeah, I'm
Olatunji?
here. I'm here.
All right, cool. What frame rate might we use for a documentary?
Probably like 60. It's supposed to be like real, right?
You could use 60.
Is it 48?
No. For frame rates, we typically deal with 24, 30, 60, 120, or anything faster than that. So he said he might shoot a documentary at 60. You could, but the standard for documentary, I probably would say 30 frames per second. That's gonna look pretty realistic. Um, and that's probably gonna be like your standard for documentary.
Okay.
So if I'm shooting a short film, what frame rate would I use? Oh, it's
24.
24. All right, cool. Everybody good? We good so far with frame rate? Any questions about frame rate?
No, all good.
All right, cool. All right.
That's
So
important. Just wanted to tap into that. That's important to keep in mind because what happens is when you're deciding either one or two things is going to happen. A lot of times, if you're doing client work, the client may not necessarily know what frame rate to shoot, but the logic of what he said, why you would shoot or pick a specific frame rate is important to consider. So you might say, well, where do you want to put it? Or what do you want to feel? Some clients might say, I want it to look really cinematic. Or a client might say, well, I want to put it on TV or YouTube. Then you can start to make those decisions yourself for the client. Or the second time you would use that logic is when you're developing a story. And this is the second important thing. Whatever story you're developing, the mood that you're trying to convey with that shot, you might be doing a narrative film, but you intentionally wanted to look a specific way. For example, a mockumentary. Or if you're doing like a paranormal activity scene where you want it to look like it's for television. So picking the right frame rate is important for those two categories.
Perfect. Yep. And like your professor was saying too, if you're dealing with a client, you might want to ask them, okay, what frame rate do you want to shoot with? Or decide that based off of what they want as a final deliverable, especially if you are working with a team of camera operators. So your professor does a lot of client work where he'll have to set up three, four, if not more cameras. So if he invites you to come help shoot an event or a production, you need to make sure that you're shooting at the same frame rate as all the other cameras. So, Morgan, what would be the issue if your professor hired you to come shoot a production? It's a play, and he's setting up five cameras. Why would it be an issue if the camera that you have is set to 60 frames per second and all the other cameras are set to 24?
They're all gonna come out at different rates and qualities.
Exactly, exactly. And also, the sound is going to be off as well. So, in order to sync the sound perfectly and have the look and feel be the same with all the cameras, number one thing to do is set your frame rate. Okay. So you can put that down in your notes as the first thing I do when I pick up my camera and I'm shooting video is I'm setting my frame rate. Okay. All right. Yep. Go ahead, Shamzira.
Yeah, so you all want to be linked at the same, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Is there any scenario
Hmm.
where you're doing a project
Hmm.
that you want some to be linked together, some to be linked different than the ones that are together, put together with that group? Like, let's say
Hmm.
you have three cameras over here that have a specific frame rate, let's say 30.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
then you have some cameras over here that is capturing a different angle, but
Hmm.
might have a different frame rate than the 30,
Hmm.
but a group that's together with, like, let's say something else, just depending on which you want to capture. You have scenarios like that.
Yeah. So Shamzira was asking what scenarios might we have multiple cameras using different frame rates? So personally, from my experience, one example would be I was shooting a concert, right? And we had four cameras set up, and they all were different. One was like a Canon, we had the Black Magic, and just different cameras. So I had everybody shoot at 30 because I wanted it to kind of look real, like that reality, real life event type of look and feel. But one of the cameras specifically, I wanted somebody to be handheld. And in that situation, the handheld camera, they could move around the venue, move around the stage. I wanted them to shoot at 60 frames per second. And what were they able to achieve with the 60 frames per second, Derek? If you're there, Derek or Justin.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
All right. Who was paying attention? Olatunji?
Yeah.
So what am I achieving by having that one camera shoot at 60 while everybody else is shooting at 30?
It's more realistic. It's more like a live footage. Like it's like you're there pretty much.
Okay. Anybody else? Ananda? What's the benefit of having that one person shoot at 60 versus everybody else shooting at 30?
Like different, yeah, it's dynamic.
Mhm.
Different things happening.
Okay.
It's not one.
Okay. All right. So the answer I was looking for was that one camera was shooting slow
Don't
motion.
tell him. Don't tell. Okay, I'm about to because he said it four times, guys. I heard him say it at least four times earlier. Listen, Derek. When he calls your name, you should be listening. He didn't say it, but that the answer was. What you can say it now again. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no problem. No problem. So guys, slow motion is only achieved um it's only achieved at 60 frames per second and faster. Okay? You can see. So 24, cinematic look and feel, movie look and feel, 30, reality, live, social media, TV look and feel, 60 is sports and hyper real, look and feel, but 60 also can be slowed down to 24 frames per second and create slow motion. And that's why on your iPhone, when you shoot at 120, you're shooting at slow motion because you're shooting at 120 and it's slowing it down for you to 24 or 30. Okay. So for the example that I was giving, I was saying that, okay, at this concert, everybody else is shooting 30, but one camera is shooting 60 and getting slow motion. Okay. That was just a trick question. Sorry
Yeah,
if I
and
got people to
in other words, the thing about guys, what happens is with that one camera that's the roving camera. I never thought about that. That's a good question, Shim. I think it's pronounced properly though. Shim Haru is like a little roll on the H. Shim's Haru. But that's a really good question though. It's really hard for me to pronounce it, but
Okay.
that's an interesting approach, Kyle, how you did that. But the one thing would happen is all the other cameras will be in the standard, they'll be in sync. And then the other one he can use for slow motion. Because I was wondering what you would do, but the question that has happened where you would mix shutter speeds and purpose, and that makes a lot of sense. Good question. Thank you for that.
All right, cool. Sorry about that, guys. That was just a trick question. All right. So we set our frame rate, right? Now we need to understand our exposure. Okay. Morgan, what is exposure? Morgan, are you there?
Yeah, it's the amount of light or shadows in like your
Mhm.
video.
Okay, so it's the overall lighting of your shot, right? So if I give you a camera and you take a photo and I look at it and I say, hey, this shot is underexposed. Morgan, what am I saying?
It's like dark.
Yep, it's too dark, right? And Dara, if you take a picture on a camera that I give you and I look at it and I say, hey, this shot is overexposed, what am I saying?
It's too much light.
Too much light. All right, cool. So every time we pick up a camera, we want to properly expose, right? We want to get the proper exposure for our shot, okay? So in order to do that, we have to balance out three different settings, okay? So that's three settings that you have to memorize and that you have to know in order to get the perfect exposure every time you pick up a camera, okay? Olatunji, give me one of our exposure settings. Olatunji.
Contrast. Contrast.
Okay. Contrast is a characteristic of how your footage looks, but it's not a setting that controls your exposure. Justin, can you give me one exposure setting?
Um, dang, I remember exposure. That's not the F, right? No. Expose.
One of
No.
them is
Okay.
F. Mhm.
So you got ISO.
ISO. All right,
Yeah.
cool. So that's one exposure setting, okay? So this is the exposure triangle, right? This is our exposure triangle. And there's three settings we have to know and memorize and understand thoroughly in order to get the proper exposure every time we pick up a camera. Kingston, give me another exposure setting. Okay. Aperture. All right. So he gave me aperture. This is another exposure setting. Okay. Ananda, give me the last exposure setting. Shutter speed. Okay. Not to try to confuse you or trick you, but why are all three of these settings in the exposure triangle, Derek?
All three because they all impact the amount of light that comes into the shot.
Exactly. Perfect. Okay. Don't overcomplicate it, guys. All three of these settings affect the lighting Okay? They affect the lighting in different ways, but all three of them affect the lighting, right? Which is why it's important for you to know all three and memorize all three. Because if you pick up a camera and you only understand aperture, your settings are not going to be optimal when you're trying to get the proper exposure. If you pick up the camera and you don't even know what shutter speed means, you're not really going to be able to properly expose manually. Okay. So the goal for Swan students specifically, or anybody that wants to shoot professionally, is to shoot in manual mode. So if you pick up a camera, like this is the Canon 7D, which is if you're just starting out, this is a camera that we would check out to you that you can use and practice with and shoot some stuff with. This camera has a mode here in this little dial, and it says letter M as in Mary, right? And M stands for manual. Manual means that we control what our aperture is, we control what our ISO is, and we control what our shutter speed is. Now, there's other settings on this dial like B, AV, TV. These settings control your exposure for you, right? It's going to control your exposure for you. But if you're a professional, if you want to be taken seriously as a DP or a cinematographer, you have to know how to shoot manual. So in order to do that, we need to memorize these three settings and understand how they work together. Okay? Does that make sense, Morgan? And I think, and did Dara leave? All
Yeah, it makes sense.
right, cool. All right, so we're gonna run through our exposure settings again really quickly. Ananda, help us out. Give us the meaning of aperture.
It's the eye of the camera, that's how we get the proper exposure.
Okay, all right, cool. So the aperture, let's start a new page. Aperture. So Ananda said it's the eye of the, not the eye of the camera, it's the eye of the
Lens.
the lens. All right. Okay. So aperture is the eye of the lens. That's my nickname for it, okay? That's not the technical term, okay? So Morgan, let's say that this is my eyeball, right? Do you see my hand?
Yeah.
If this is my eye, right? I'm going to give you two options. Option one is this right here. Option two is this right here. Which option do you think is going to bring in more light through here?
Option two.
Option two. So this is option two,
Mm-hmm.
and light is going to come through here
Mm-hmm.
and hit your camera sensor. So this hand is your camera sensor, and light from the environment is going to come through here and hit the sensor. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
This is option two, and this is option one. Which one brings in more light?
Oh, option one.
Why?
Because it's more wider and open.
More open. Okay? Cool. So this is a very rudimentary way of understanding aperture. Aperture is the eye of the lens. You open it to bring in more light, you close it to bring in less light. So Justin, if I give you a camera and you take a picture and I say, "Hey, this shot is overexposed." Should you open or close your aperture?
Close it.
Close your aperture. If we have too much light in our environment, we can close our eye, close our aperture, and make it darker. Kingston, if I give you a camera and I look at your shot and say, "Hey, this shot is overexposed." Wait, did I say that already? Oh, underexposed.
You should open.
Open your aperture. If your shot is underexposed, meaning that it's too dark, open your aperture and you're going to invite in more light. Okay? So I'm Morgan, I'm gonna write down the aperture settings. So aperture is measuring f-stops. Okay. So f-stop just means that it's gonna have the letter F in front of it, and then it's gonna be a number. Okay. So this is an example of an aperture setting, f1.2, right? So for example, this lens, this lens has a max aperture of f1.4. Okay. So the smaller the number, the more open your eye is. Okay. So this might be f1.2. Okay. That's an aperture setting, f1.2. So aperture is measured in f-stops. F1.2 is a wide open aperture on a lens. Now, in the middle, we might have something like this. And this might be F8. Okay? So this is the thing that can be kind of confusing with aperture. The smaller the f-stop, the smaller the number here, the more light you're going to bring in. The bigger the number, the bigger the f-stop, the less light you're going to bring in. You see how that's kind of like backwards? Small number, more light, big number, less light. Okay? That makes sense, Morgan?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So in between, you might have something like F4. And then down over here, we might have F16. We might have like F22. Okay? Bigger the number, the more open your eye is. It's going to allow you to bring in more light. Smaller than the number, the smaller your eye opening is, you're going to bring in less light. Okay? All right, cool. So we already went over if a shot is underexposed, we can open our aperture. If our shot is overexposed, we can close down our aperture. Okay? So here's where we have to dive deeper into the setting. Aperture affects the lighting. It affects how much light is going to come in and hit that camera sensor. So light's going to come through here, come through the lens, and hit your camera sensor. But it's also going to affect something else. So aperture affects the lighting, and it also affects what? Shimzero.
Aperture affects the lighting and also affects something else.
Yes. What else does it affect?
Of that triangle, like the ISO and shutter speed.
Well, aperture affects your lighting, but it also affects something else in terms of how it looks.
It's called like
Depth? Yes.
depth of field.
Depth of field. All right, guys. So aperture affects how much light comes in and hits that sensor, and it also affects depth of field, okay? All right, so let's go over depth of field real quick. All right, depth of field. All right, cool. Ananda, can you tell us what depth of field is? Don't you teach this? Or is that somebody else?
I do, but it wasn't this advanced.
Okay.
How in focus are blurred in images.
Okay, Ananda said how blurry or how sharp our image is. All right, depth of field, right? Depth of field. Depth of field is going to determine if our background is super sharp and clear or if our background is blurred out. So, Morgan, on your iPhone, What happens when you go to portrait mode? What happens when you shoot in portrait mode on the iPhone?
It blurs out whatever
Hmm.
is the background of your subject.
Perfect. So that's depth of field. So what your iPhone is doing for you is it's creating a wide open aperture. So a wide open aperture is something like f1.2. And what that does is it makes your background blurrier. Okay. So only a little bit is in focus. Okay. So that's what we're going to call a shallow depth of field. Okay. A shallow depth of field. A shallow depth of field comes with a wide open aperture, and shallow means that only a little bit is in focus. Okay. And Dara, I saw that you stepped away for a second. Do you need me to back up?
Sorry, I'm reading it.
Okay. All right. We'll back up for you in a second. Okay. All right. So aperture affects the lighting, and it also affects depth of field. So a shallow depth of field means that only a little bit is in focus. Kingston, why would we want to shoot something with a shallow depth of field where only a little bit is in focus?
Because I like focus shot on what's in front of you and a blurry shot on what's in the back.
Mhm. Perfect. So we decide to have a shallow depth of field for a specific purpose. We want to blur out the background, right? So what I asked Indira was, what happens when you shoot in portrait mode? It blurs out the background. So what is that mode used for? It's used for portraits, right? So if you ever seen like a graduation photo or a school photo where the background is super blurred out, that's intentional. That it just looks good, right? We don't want to be distracted by the background. We want to focus on the subject. Okay? So you have to set that intention when you pick up the camera. Do I want everything sharp and in focus, or do I just want to focus on one thing and have everything else blurred out? For example, if I'm shooting a short film and I have a scene in a cafe, right? And it's a lot going on in the background of my subject. My subject's sitting at the table drinking tea, right? Do I want to see everything that's going on in the background, or do I want to blur that background out a little bit so we can just focus on our character? We want to blur it out. And then in order to do that, we have to open our aperture. Okay? Does that make sense? So that's what a shallow depth of field is. And a deep depth of field means what, Kingston?
Deeper field means that you're gonna have more of a accentuated background and
Mhm.
blurry front.
Okay, deep depth of field means that everything is sharp. There are more things in focus. We can see way further back. We can see our subject, but we can also see what's going on in the background. Olatunji, can you give us an example of something that we would be shooting where we might want a deep depth of field?
Um, like a wide shot
Wide shot of what?
of like a city.
A city. Okay, cool. If I'm shooting a shot of the whole Baltimore City skyline, do I want to see everything, or do I want to blur out most of it and only see one person?
You want to see everything.
You want to see everything, okay? So in order to achieve that deeper depth of field, we have to close down our aperture, okay? Does that make sense, everybody? Cool. Aperture is the easiest to understand, maybe next to ISO. You just have to remember what depth of field means, okay? All right, let's back up for Indira so she can catch up. Let's run through it really quickly. Um, Justin, tell us what exposure is.
Okay, hold on. My phone kind of freezing. Um,
Okay. Okay.
so basically exposure is the amount of light that enters the lens and can be adjusted by aperture, Well, it could be aperture, ISO, or shutter speed, and depending on what you're trying to shoot is what you change.
Exactly. Exposure is the overall lighting of your shot. Okay. So if I say, hey, this shot that you took, Derek, is underexposed, what am I saying, Derek?
Yeah. If you're saying it's underexposed, then it's too dark. I mean,
Too dark. Okay. Morgan, if I say a shot that you took is overexposed, what am I saying?
It's too light or bright.
It's too bright. Cool. So in order to get the proper exposure and get a great shot, we have to properly expose. And Olatunji, what are the three settings that we have to manipulate in order to get the proper exposure?
Aperture, shutter speed, and ISO.
All right, cool. So that's your exposure triangle. You have your aperture, you have your ISO, and then you have your shutter speed. Okay. And let's back up a little bit. So the first thing I do when I pick up a camera is what? And I'm shooting video. What's the first thing I need to set?
Frame rate.
Frame rate. You said aperture. All right. So the first thing we need to set is our aperture. No, look, you got me saying aperture. Your frame rate or your frames per second. Okay. Specifically with video, you might shoot at 24, you might shoot at 30, you might shoot at 60 or 120. Each of those frame rates have a specific look and feel. Okay. The reason you shoot 24 is you want a cinematic look and feel. You want it to look like a movie, right? So that may be a short film, a feature film, it might be a music video, whatever you want to look cinematic. If you set your frame rate to 30, that's going to look more realistic. That's going to look like stuff that you see on social media. That's going to look like stuff that you see on TV. So if you want that more reality TV look and feel, something that looks like it's happening in the moment, or go ahead, Shimzo.
Just a question.
Mm.
I heard at one point, like, you're trying to get the specific look.
Mhm.
Like, you know the movie Saving Private Ryan?
Saving Private Ryan.
Everything's super chaotic and
Mhm.
feels though you're there.
Mhm.
Which speeds would that be? What speeds would that be? And then
Mhm.
what speeds would that be? 24, 30. I'm sure it's not a higher speed because you don't want
Mm.
to noise motion. So could you go lower than 24 to get that? Or how, what would I have to set in order to get something?
Let me see if your professor may have experience with that. Dave, you there? He might be gone. I think he's driving or something right now.
I can almost find the answer.
Okay. All right, let's come back to that because I never shot like a feature film or anything like that. So I typically don't like mix my frame rates when I'm shooting. But it makes sense that we might shoot at a faster frame rate for some scenes and then use a regular frame rate like 24 for most of it.
I'm work for a filmmaker.
Mm.
So, like they went over that.
Mm.
And I was think I was gonna expound upon the question. I don't remember what they said, but I remember there was like a specific style that you could only shoot something that's like straight up and just like disorientated.
Mm.
But I can't remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Your professor has shot some features, so I just wanted to ask him when he comes back. All right, cool.
I'm here, Kyle. I'm sorry. I'm just locked out of my computer. So I've been trying to get
Oh.
logged in. I'm trying to reset my password, but I'm here. I'm sorry.
I just Shamziro had a question. He was saying like, and I was going to ask you, have you had experience maybe more so with shooting action where most of your film is shot in 24, but you might choose a different frame rate for action?
I have not personally, but I have some examples that did come to mind for that.
Mhm.
Um, but those generally associated, in my experience, ones I've seen, I should say, associated with like a present day scenes versus juxtaposed to like a flashback scene. They may mix media like that, or like if a person, I'm trying to remember, it's like reality TV films. I've seen them done like that as well, like a film that's shot and what's his name? We showed that in one of my classes, 220. There are two films that I can think about if you want to see what it looks like. One would be this film called Missing. I believe they did some mixed media there. Missing is on Netflix. That's Shania, either what's her name? Shania Lathan, not Shania Lathan. What's the other one? Nia Long. Nia Long is in it. Missing is one that does mixed media with different shutter speeds, and another one is
Different frame rates or different shutter speeds?
different frame rates. Different
Different
frame
frame.
rates. I'm sorry. They use different frame rates because they pull different mediums together. Um, so it juxtaposes different frame rates in one film from 30, 60. It's called Missing. They use 30, 60, 24. So they use at least three. They might even use more than that. And then another one is called 127 hour. There's a little bit of mixed frame rates as well. But I personally haven't done it. I personally haven't done that yet.
And is there I don't even know what camera could do that. Is there slower frame rates than 24?
Yeah, a lot of cameras could do that. I think most cameras can do that. You just change it to whatever you want. You could change it to one frame per second if you want. You can. I think most cameras do that. But yes, I can play with that once we get in. But the answer is yeah. The only thing about it, anything under the reason 24 became the standard before television, before 30 becoming the standard, because the way the eye looks at the motion blur, right? So the only thing to keep in mind is anything under 24 looks it gives a unrealistic motion blur. The 24 was they realized they felt that was the most realistic motion blur that the eye replicates, right? So when you look at anything under 24, like if you go to 30 frames, I mean if you go to like 20 and 18 and 17, that motion blur looks really weird. But that's the only thing. It creates like a kind of an effect in the motion blur. But yes, a lot of cameras can do that.
All right, cool. Thank you. All right, cool.
And with the slower shutter speed, obviously, or slower frames per second, obviously, you're going to get more light in your frame. Those slower, frames per second and stuff like that, you're going to have more light hitting it, so it's blurry and all the other stuff.
All right, cool. All right, so we were just going through everything to make sure Indira was on point. 24 is our standard cinematic look and feel. 30 is our reality TV, social media, TV look and feel. 60 is going to be your sports and is going to be used for slow motion. So if you're shooting something where you want the action or the motion to be hyper real, 60 is a good shutter speed, not good frame rate to use. And if you want to shoot slow motion, you can shoot 60, 120, 200, or anything faster than that. So on the iPhone, you can shoot you can shoot 120 for super slow motion. Okay, so the first thing we do when we get our camera is we set our frame rate when we're doing video. Then we have to properly expose to get the right shot. First thing we went over was aperture. So here's your exposure triangle, and these are the three settings. Aperture is the first one. Aperture is measured in f-stops, so that means that it's going to be the letter F and then a number. And the smaller the number, the more open your aperture is. So our nickname for aperture is the eye of the lens, meaning that the more open your eye is, the more light is going to come in and pass through your eye and hit your camera sensor. So an open eye or open aperture might be something like f1.2 or f1.8 or f2, right? That's going to bring in the most light possible. And a closed eye is going to invite in less light and hit that sensor. So that's going to darken your shot, okay? So a closed aperture might be something like f8 or f12 or f16. And most cameras, most lenses stop at f22 with the aperture. And depending on the lens, it might open up to f1.2, f1.4, f1.8, or f2.8. What would be the benefit? Let's say that this lens right here, right? This lens is a 50 millimeter f1.4 lens, meaning that it opens all the way up to f1.4. This zoom lens, I'm just leave it on here. This zoom lens, this is an 18 to 135 zoom lens. And the max aperture on here is, it's blocked off. I believe it's 3.5. Okay. So we have the 50 millimeter lens, which is gonna so the 50 millimeters is just how much we see in our shot. Is it wide or is it close? And it opens all the way up to f1.4. This is a zoom lens, a 18 to 135 zoom lens, and it opens up to 3.5. So, Morgan, what would be the benefit of having a lens that opens up to 1.4 versus a lens that only opens up to 3.5?
It'll be like wider, like what you view or what's in the video.
Close. Okay, so yes, the zoom lens will be better if we need to capture more, right? Because this lens can be this lens can go to 18 millimeters. So that's a nice and super wide shot, right? This is a prime lens, meaning that it doesn't zoom, but it does open up to 1.4 on the aperture. This only opens up to 3.5. So who can tell me why this might be beneficial to have the 1.4 lens versus just having the 3.5 zoom lens? Why is this beneficial? And what situation would this come in handy? So aperture. So the aperture opens up to 1.4 on this particular lens. The aperture opens up to 3.5 on the zoom lens. Why might this come in handy? Instead of just having this, we might want to also have this. Why would this come in handy? It'll be what? More refined?
Like it'll be better at focusing at that sort of aperture than one that's already wide lens.
Okay, all right, cool. Let's not overcomplicate it. So if this opens up to f1.4 and this opens up to 3.5,
oh, that's a bigger shot.
Not bigger shot, but so what happens when we open our eye all the way open? We get in the what? We get the most light.
Yeah.
So which one of these brings in more light? This one, the f1.4 or the f3.5? 1.4. So this will come in handy in dark environments. Okay? Because your zoom lens only opens up to 3.5. This opens up to 1.4. This is going to bring in actually a lot more light than this zoom lens. So if you're in a dark environment indoors or you're shooting at night, having a lens that opens up to 1.4 or 1.2 is actually very valuable. Okay? So not to confuse you guys, but that's a real life example of using different apertures and why you might have multiple lenses when you're shooting. Okay, does that make sense? Did I confuse anybody with that?
No, that makes sense.
Makes sense. All right, cool. All right, so aperture affects how much light comes in and hits that camera sensor, right? So this is wide open. This is going to bring in a lot of light, and this is only going to bring in a little bit of light, okay? Aperture also affects something else. It affects your depth of field, okay? Olatunji, what is depth of field?
Depth of field is where it just shows how like far you can see pretty much if it's blurry or not.
Exactly. Depth of field is how much is in focus, okay? How much is in focus? So Kingston, if I say this shot has a shallow depth of field, what am I saying?
Saying that the the front side is very fine while everything's in the background.
Yep. So with a shallow depth of field, our subject, whatever we're focusing on, is really sharp, but everything around, in front and behind our subject is really blurred out. So that's what we call a shallow depth of field. Ananda, what is a deep depth of field? What does that look like?
Whole background, like
Mhm.
see everything's
Yep. So deep depth of field means that everything is sharp. So shallow depth of field means only a little bit is in focus. Deep depth of field means that almost everything is in focus. Okay. So if you're shooting a portrait, Morgan, might we, might we want to shoot a deep depth of field or shallow depth of field? If I'm shooting a portrait, a headshot,
Shallow,
shallow, why?
because it's going to be closer up rather than further, like
Yes,
the subject,
yes. Your subject is going to be what?
like closer to the,
Not physically closer per se, but it's going to be, how's it going to look? Sh-
like focused more so
Yeah,
on,
focused. It's going to be sharp. And how's
yeah,
the background around our subject going to look?
blurred.
Blurred. All right, cool. So that'll be great for portraits. Now, if I am shooting the entire quad, I might want to use a deep depth of field so that I can see Holmes Hall. I can see, oh Lord, I don't forgot all the other building names. Um, I can see all of the buildings in the quad and I can see people walking by. So the more that we have in our shot that we want to see and we want to have sharpen and focus, we have to do a deeper depth of field. So you see how shallow is over here? This is with your wide open aperture. The more we open up our aperture, the more shallow the depth of field. The more we close down our aperture, the deeper the depth of field. Okay? All right, cool. All right, so we have two more settings to go over. Is there any questions before we move on? Hey, Dave, can we give him a test next week somehow? I want them to make sure they,
Yes,
yeah. All right, cool. All
we
right,
could
guys.
do it. We could do a test together.
All right, cool. All right, guys. So this is your last day in order to get all of this stuff memorized and down pat. I need to put some challenges on y'all so y'all can actually try to memorize this, okay? All right, so we went over aperture. Aperture is measured in f-stops. Aperture is the eye of the lens, meaning the more that we open our eye, the more light is going to come in and hit our sensor. The more we close our aperture or close our eye, the less light is going to come in and hit that sensor. So if our shot is underexposed, we can open our aperture to invite in more light. If our shot is overexposed, we can close down our aperture and bring in less light. And aperture not only affects your light, but it also affects your depth of field. Depth of field is how much is in focus. The more you open up your eye or open up your aperture, the less is in focus. The more you close your aperture, the more is in focus. Okay, so you need to decide, what am I shooting? Am I shooting a portrait? Am I shooting a city skyline? Am I shooting a group shot where there's multiple people in the frame? What do we want to see in focus and what do we want to have blurred out? That'll kind of determine what your aperture is. Okay. All right. So we're gonna move on to the next setting. Were you about to say something, Dave? All right, cool. All right, next setting, shutter speed. Derek, can you give us shutter speed? What does it mean?
Shutter speed is how fast it captures when the photography is clicking, like how many times you're blinking.
Yes, exactly. All right, so shutter speed is how fast or how slow your shutter opens and closes. Okay. So there's
Who last week did the eyeball blink? Who was that did that blinking of the eyeball? That was great. Who was that,
Ananda.
Kyle?
I think that was Ananda. Wasn't it you, Ananda? All right. Yeah. So let's say this is my so staying with the eyeball or the eye analogy, let's say my hands are my eyelids, right? How fast or how slow my eye opens and closes is what our shutter speed is. How fast or how slow our shutter opens and closes. Okay? Again, guys, make sure you pay attention to the words that we're using to describe our camera settings. Okay? And Derek, what do we do with our aperture? What's the verb that what verbs do we use when it comes to our aperture?
Like
We
the
what? We
your
what and what?
well, to my understanding, is you decide if you're focusing on the foreground or the background,
Mm-hmm. And what are we doing to our aperture? What's happening to our eye?
deciding the size of the lens you want to use to
Mhm.
based off of what you want to capture.
Okay. So when I go this way, what am I doing to my eye or my aperture? When I'm
Opening
going this,
it, opening it up essentially.
yes, you're opening it up. What happens when I'm going this way?
You're making it smaller or closing it.
So what do we do to our aperture? What's the verb? We what and what?
Opening and closing.
We open and close our aperture. All right, cool. The reason why I put emphasis on that because let's say your professor is your director on set of a short film, right? And you're the cinematographer. And he's looking at the monitor and he yells, "Hey, close down your aperture." You need to understand what he's talking about, right? So that's why we need to understand the specific terms, right? The specific verbs that we need to use. So we open and close our aperture, right? So shutter speed is how fast or how slow our shutter opens and closes. So Shim Zero, what do we do to our shutter speed? What's the verbs? The verb, what are we doing to our shutter speed when we're changing it? I don't think I've said this per se, but just wanted to see if you understood. So this is a so if I say well, I'm just tell you, right? So you have a faster shutter speed and you have a slow shutter speed. How do we go from a slow shutter speed to a fast shutter speed? No. All right, I'm confusing y'all. All right, so you just speed up your aperture. I mean, speed up your shutter speed. So if you have a slow shutter speed and you speed it up, you're gonna end up with a faster shutter speed. If you have a fast shutter speed and you want to slow it down, you just slow it down. So we speed up our aperture and we slow it down. So if you're on set and the director and you're the DP or the cinematographer, and the director says, "Hey, this looks weird. Can you slow down the shutter speed?" You get what I'm saying, Shim Zero? All right, cool. So
The
yep.
two terms he's trying to get you to remember, one with four terms. Shutter speed, you speed up and slow down. Exposure, you open and close. That's what he wants you. He's trying to get you to remember those terms because those he's very correct. Those are the terms that we use on set. Speed up your shutter speed or slow down your shutter speed. Remember that. The second thing he wants you to try to remember is open up your aperture or open up your exposure. So that circle when you talk about opening up your eye and closing your eye. So just remember that open, close your aperture, and speed up or slow down your shutter.
Yep. All right, guys. Sorry, I'm trying to make it simple, but at the same time, not just tell y'all the answer. It's be throwing y'all off though. All right, cool. All right, so an example of a slower shutter speed might be 1/48. Okay. So shutter speed is measured in fractions, right? Meaning that you're going to have the number 1 and then the fraction and then the number at the bottom. Some cameras, you only see the number on the bottom. Okay. So if you pick up a camera and there's a fraction, you should automatically know that it's the shutter speed setting. Sometimes there is no fraction and it's just going to give you the number on the bottom. Okay. So this is an example of a slow shutter speed setting. And then next to that, we have 1/50, 1 over, let me go back, 1/60. We have 1/120, 1/200, and then 1/1000. Okay, so these are examples of different shutter speeds on your camera, right? So Kingston,
Sure.
if I start here at 1/48 and I change my shutter speed going this way, what am I doing to my shutter speed? If I'm going from here to here, what am I doing to my shutter speed?
Just slowing the camera down. No. You're 141 slow mo.
So this is your shutter speed, right?
Yeah.
This is a slow shutter speed.
Yeah. So you're speeding it up.
So when we go from here, 1/48 to 120, we're speeding up our shutter speed, okay?
Yeah.
So this is a slow shutter speed, right? This is a faster shutter speed the more we go this way. So let's look at our shutter. So let's go back to the example of the eye. So this is your eye blinking. Option 1, this is option 1. Everybody look at my hand. Option 1, this is shutter speed number 1. This is shutter speed number 2. Ananda, which shutter speed brings in more light?
Option 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Option 1.
Option 1. Why?
Lower.
Slower, right? Correct. The slower your shutter speed, the more time light has to come in and hit your eyeball or hit your camera sensor. So this is a slow shutter speed again. Slow shutter speed, that means that light has more time to come in and hit that camera sensor. So who else? Justin. If I say if you have a camera and your shot is underexposed, should you speed up your shutter speed or slow it down? You, Justin, are you there? You thinking?
Hold on, I didn't hit my phone when that. Will you repeat that one more time?
Okay, so if you have a shot where
Uh-huh.
your shot is underexposed, meaning
Mm-hmm.
it's too dark, should you
Right.
speed up your shutter speed or slow it down?
Um, Hold on. It's under, so it means it's too dark.
Yes.
I would speed it up. All
Hey.
right.
Okay. So somebody give us a different opinion.
Whether.
You would slow it down to let more light in.
Exactly. The one with the pink thing on it.
The pink thing?
Yeah. The slower your shutter speed, the more time light has to come in and hit your camera sensor. So if you think about your eyeball, right? Look at my eye. If I slowly open and close my eye, light has more time to come in and hit my eyeball, right? But what if I'm blinking really fast? Right? If I'm blinking really fast, light does not have as much time to come in and hit my eyeball. Okay? All right. So shutter speed affects how much light comes in and hits your sensor. Shutter speed is how fast or how slow your shutter opens and closes. Shutter speed also affects one other thing. So all three of these exposure settings in the exposure triangle, they affect the lighting and they also affect one other thing. For aperture affected the depth of field. What's the other thing that shutter speed affects? Who knows? What is it? Not the rate. It's similar to the frame rate though. Olatunji, do you remember what else shutter speed affects? It affects the lighting, but it also affects something else.
The frame rate.
Not the frame rate. What about the shot does it affect? So aperture affects the depth of field, meaning that depending on what aperture you use, that'll determine how your background looks and looks. It might make your background sharper or it might make your background blurrier. But with shutter speed, it affects something else. Does anyone know?
So we didn't say the frame rate?
Not the frame rate. It affects what? I'm gonna give you the first part of the word. It affects motion.
Motion blur.
Motion blur. All right, cool. Shutter speed affects the lighting. The slower your shutter speed, the more light is going to come in. The faster your shutter speed, the less light is going to come in. And it also affects motion blur. Who can tell me what motion blur is?
How fast the camera is moving and the picture that is clear.
Okay, how sharp or how blurry your motion is, right? If you've ever tried to take a picture of your little cousin while they were running around acting crazy, how does their arms and legs look when you try to take that picture of them?
Straight.
It looks blurry, right? All right, so the slower the shutter speed, the more motion blur. The faster the shutter speed, the less motion blur. Okay? So the slower your shutter speed, the more blurry your motion is gonna have. You got it, Kendall? How many people does it take to open it?
I think it'll be 3 at this point. Use it every piece for them.
All right, sorry about that. All right, cool. So motion blur, how sharp or how blurry your motion is. So if I am shooting a sports scene, right? Do I want my motion to be blurry or sharp?
Sharp.
Sharp. We want to see the detail, right? So the camera on the MacBook is pretty fast on the shutter speed. Like when I move my hand, you can see every bit of motion. So that means that the camera naturally probably has a fast shutter speed. Let me see if I go fast. So now my hand looks blurry, right? You can't really see the detail in my ring, right? So that's motion blur. So if we want to see more motion, we have to speed up our shutter speed. Okay? Now, Indira Morgan, we went over this last week. There's a shortcut I want you guys to memorize. Does anyone remember the shortcut for setting your shutter speed? Who remembers?
Equation?
Yes. What's the shortcut for choosing a shutter speed? Yes. So a good shutter speed to start with when you're setting up your exposure is double your frame rate. So Morgan and Derek, you guys both remember frame rate, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Morgan and Derek, which frame rate would I use for a cinematic look and feel?
60,
Uh-uh.
24.
24. All right. 24 movies, cinematic look and feel. 30, reality TV, social media, TV, documentary. 60, high-speed sports, action, slow motion. 120 or anything faster is going to be specifically for slow motion. Okay? So a good shutter speed to start with is going to be double your frame rate. So if you're shooting a short film, Morgan, at 24 frames per second, what's a good shutter speed to start with? This is the shortcut.
Um, Wait, if I'm filming what? Sorry.
What frame rate is good for movies? Cinematic
Oh,
film.
um, the 60?
All right, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right. Let's slow down. Let's slow down. Let's slow down. 24
Mm-hmm.
cinematic
Mm-hmm.
movies. Okay. 30
Mm-hmm.
TV, social media, documentary. 60 sports, slow motion. You got it?
Yeah.
All right, cool. What frame rate is good for a cinematic look and feel?
Wait, 24.
24. All right, cool. So, what is the shortcut for choosing a shutter speed to start with?
Um,
Take your frame rate and do what?
I'm sorry, truthfully, I did not hear that part.
Okay, don't worry about it.
Is
I'm
it
just making
double
sure.
it?
Yes,
Oh, yeah, I did hear that. Okay, yeah.
double your frame rate. So if I am shooting a short film at 24 frames per second, Indira, what's a good shutter speed to start with? Indira?
Sorry, my MacBook froze. Would it be 48?
Yes. So if I'm shooting a short film at 24 frames per second, I can set my shutter speed to 48 or 1 over 48. And that's gonna give me a cinematic look and feel um where the motion blur it looks good. Okay. So that's the shortcut I want you guys to remember. Double your frame rate, and that's going to give you a good shutter speed to start with. Okay. So typically when I'm shooting video, the first thing I do is I set my frame rate, and then I set my shutter speed to double it. And then I tweak my aperture and then my ISO. So Morgan, what's a good frame rate to shoot a reality TV show?
60.
You could shoot in 60. What other frame rate?
Oh, frame rate is 30, but the
30.
shutter speed would be 60.
Yes. So if I'm shooting at 30 frames per second, a good shutter speed to start with is 60. What if I am shooting a slow motion video at 120 frames per second, Ananda? What's a good shutter speed to start with? If I'm shooting 120 frames per second, super slow motion, what's a good shutter speed to start with? It's not on here. So what's the shortcut for choosing your shutter speed? Yes. So the shortcut, well, shutter speed equals your frame rate times 2. You good? Everything's back? All right, cool. All right, so double of 120 would be what, Ananda? 120 times 2. So yeah, y'all thought y'all wasn't gonna use your math after high school. 240. All right, cool. All right, guys. I'm giving y'all the shortcut so it's not as complicated. All right, so the shortcut for choosing your shutter speed is to just double your frame rate. So if you are shooting a short film at 24 frames per second, a good shutter speed to start with is 48. or 1/48. If you're shooting a reality TV show at 30 frames per second, a good shutter speed to start with is 60 or 1/60. If you're shooting high-speed sports at 60 frames per second, a good shutter speed to start with is 120. Okay? That formula is going to give you the best look in terms of your motion blur. Okay? Mm?
Did you set a speed you?
You said, what is it?
Did you set a speed?
Double your frame rate. Okay? Specifically for video, guys. Photography is slightly different, okay? I'll tell y'all one thing in terms of photography. So everyone look here. Let's say I'm a photographer, right? I'm a photographer and I'm doing handheld photography, right? I'm not using a tripod. I'm just walking around an event and I'm taking pictures. I'm walking around and I'm taking pictures. How do you think these shots are going to look? Why? Because my hand is moving too much, right? Now, what happens if I was a photographer and I just put the camera on a tripod? Cool, right?
He told us to always use the tripod.
For video. Specifically for video. And then you can break that rule if you want to have your shot deliberately look shaky. Now, the photography example, if anybody is interested in photography, when you're doing handheld photography, your hand might shake a little bit, right? And that's going to introduce motion blur, okay? When you're doing handheld photography, your motion and there's going to be added motion to your shot, okay? So if you're ever wondering why a picture you took is blurry, it might be because your hand was shaking, okay? So with handheld photography, I typically start my shutter speed at 100 or 120 when I'm doing handheld photography. Why would I do that? What's the benefit of starting my shutter speed at 120 and I'm doing handheld photography? That shutter speed is gonna eliminate some of the what? What does shutter speed affect? It affects the lighting and what?
The lighting and how sharp it is.
How sharp what is?
The photo.
Yes. Yes. But I'm looking for a specific term. Shutter speed affects the lighting and it affects what?
The motion blur.
Motion blur, right? So if my hand is shaking, what am I introducing into my shot? Motion blur, right? The more I shake my hand, and I'm trying to take a photo, I'm introducing motion blur. So what happens when I speed up my shutter speed? Somebody give me the answer. What happens when we speed up our shutter speed? What happens? Not only does our shot get darker, but what happens? Don't overcomplicate it, guys. Yeah, y'all overthinking it, guys. What happens when we speed up our shutter speed? What happens to this?
The
Is it
motion
more
blur
motion
goes
blur?
away.
Yes, we eliminate the motion blur. Okay? So the faster the shutter speed, the less motion blur that we have. Okay? So if I am shooting a sports scene and I want to see more detail in our motion, should we speed up our shutter speed or slow it down? Anybody? Should we speed up our shutter speed if we want to see more motion clearly and crisp, or should we slow it down? Anybody?
We slow it down.
If I'm shooting a
Wait, wait,
sports,
wait. I mean, we speed it up. Speed it up. Speed it up.
okay. All right, so I don't think y'all get it yet. Ananda, tell us what motion blur is.
thing your little cousin
Mhm.
around and they look a little blurry as you're chasing them around?
Exactly. Motion blur is your motion blurry or sharp? Okay. So if we have a lot of motion blur, our motion is going to be very blurry. We're not going to be able to see it, right? So if we're shooting a sports scene or an action scene and we want to see the detail, we want to see LeBron sweat bouncing off of the basketball. Um, bad example, but if we want to see that detail in that motion, we can't have that much motion blur. So if we're shooting a sports scene, should we speed up or slow down our shutter speed?
Speed it up.
Speed it up. The faster the shutter speed, the less motion blur. Maybe what's the let's do is this the symbol, right symbol for this? No, no, no. Yeah, no, you're right. So the more we go this way, the more motion blur. The more we go this way, the less motion blur. Okay? All right. So that one was throwing y'all for a loop. But in order to make things easier, I gave you guys a shortcut. And Dara, what's our shortcut for choosing our shutter speed?
Double it times frames per second.
Exactly. Double your frame rate. Olatunji, what is a good shutter speed to start with when we're shooting 24 frames per second? We're shooting a short film.
48.
48. Justin, we're shooting a live TV, we're shooting a TV show at 30 frames per second. What's a good shutter speed to start with?
60.
Exactly. Morgan, we are shooting slow motion at 60 frames per second. What's a good shutter speed to start with?
112.
Um,
You said 60?
yeah, 60. 120.
120.
Yep, perfect. Derek, I'm doing handheld photography. What's a good shutter speed to start with to eliminate some of that motion blur created by my hand?
Uh, maybe 120.
120. Okay. All right, cool. All right, guys. I'm not gonna overcomplicate it anymore. Now that you guys know the shortcut, just 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 get that down. But you should understand that shutter speed is how fast or how slow your shutter opens and closes. It's measured in fractions. And the slower the shutter speed, the more light you're going to introduce. The faster the shutter speed, the less light you're going to introduce. And shutter speed affects your motion blur. If we have a slow shutter speed, we're going to have more motion blur. If we have a fast shutter speed, we're going to have less motion blur. So that's a lot to remember, but I gave y'all the shortcut. Okay? Let's knock out this last setting. Okay? Because we didn't get it, we didn't get to do the hands-on today. Maybe I'll show you guys one setup real quick before we wrap up. But let's get this down packed so that we can have a test next week and maybe do hands-on next week when we have more people in class.
Thank you.
All right, what's the last setting? Anybody? ISO.
Who said that? I heard somebody in the classroom say, who was that?
Kingston.
Great job, Kingston.
All right. So who can tell us what ISO is?
Camera setting to close the sensor.
Yes. ISO is your camera's sensitivity to light. Sensitivity to light. ISO is your camera's sensitivity to light. Morgan and Indira, we went over this last week. So what does sensitive mean? Sensitive means that you're more vulnerable to something, right? So if I am sensitive to light, this light above me is going to be very bright versus somebody that isn't sensitive to light. It might just look normal to them. So if I'm sensitive to light, I might wear glasses, might wear sunglasses or something. So that's just one way to think about it, right? An easier way to think about ISO is artificial light, right? So just try to remember that. Remember that. ISO is artificial light. Okay. So when we boost our ISO, we increase our sensitivity to light, meaning we just add light. Okay. So ISO is going to be measured in numbers like this. So most cameras, they start at an ISO of 100. Some of them might start at 50. So this is a low ISO setting, 100, right? And then when we boost our ISO, the number's going to get bigger, okay? What's up? Are you in this class? 220?
Roberts?
Yes. 220?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You missed the whole workshop. Were you in class last week?
Y'all was doing something with the camera, right?
Zoom?
Oh, Zoom.
Nah, I don't think. Are you sure you're in this class? 220? 130 to 415?
And in front of the camera, who is that? I recognize the voice. I think I know who that is. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
in. Yeah, he's in there.
All right, cool. All right, cool. You won't have to catch up because we supposed to be having tests next week. All right, cool. ISO, right? ISO is the camera's sensitivity to light, or I just call it artificial light. A low ISO might be something like 100, right? That means that our camera is not that sensitive to light. But the more we boost our ISO, the more sensitive our camera gets to light. Or you could say the more we boost our ISO, the more artificial light we introduce, okay? That's not the technical explanation, but it helps me make it simple, okay? So when we go this way, we're boosting our ISO, okay? All right, so what happens, Kingston, what happens when we boost our ISO from 100 to 500? What happens to our shot? When we boost our ISO from 100 to 500, what happens to our shot?
It gets a lot brighter.
It gets brighter because we're increasing the sensitivity to light, or we're introducing more artificial light, okay? So if you're in a situation, maybe you're shooting indoors and your shot is underexposed, it's too dark, one thing that you can do is boost your ISO, right? Does that make sense, Morgan and Dara? Are you guys good with that? Does that make sense? Any questions about that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. So the smaller the number, the less ISO we're using, the less artificial light we're introducing, the less sensitive to light our camera is. The bigger the number, the more we boost our ISO, the brighter our shot is going to be. Our camera is going to get more sensitive to light, or we're going to introduce more artificial light. Okay.
Wait, I have a question. How do you determine like
How do you
your
determine?
ISO is?
Okay. So, Indira, if if um if you take a video and I look at it and I say, hey, this shot is underexposed, what should you do to your ISO?
Boost it?
Boost it, right? If I look at your shot and say, hey, this shot is overexposed, what should you do to your ISO?
You're gonna lower it.
Turn it down. Okay. That's it. That's simple.
Okay, thank you.
Now, ISO affects the lighting, it affects the camera sensitivity to light, and it also affects something else. What is it? It affects the lighting and it also affects something else. Who remembers from last week? Olasunji? Justin? Derek?
It's the green.
Noise and grain. Okay. Digital noise and grain. All right. Olatunji, if I am looking at a shot that you took and I say, hey, this shot is grainy, it's too grainy, what does that shot look like?
It looks like it has static all over it.
Looks like it has static all over it. Now, typically, does that look good?
No.
Okay, so we don't like noise and grain unless that's an intentional look that we're going for. Noise and grain lowers the quality of your shot, per se. Right? The more noise and grain in our shot, the it's going to look like we have a lower quality camera. Okay? Now, if you're looking at a shot that has absolutely no noise and grain, and the exposure is properly exposed, you're going to think, oh, this is a great camera or this is a great lens. Okay. So the more we boost our ISO, the more we introduce noise, digital noise and grain. Okay. So if that plays such a high factor in how our shot looks in terms of quality, what's our policy? What might our policy be when it comes to ISO? Ananda, you remember? You don't remember? Derek, you remember? What might our policy be when it comes to ISO specifically?
We don't touch it until the last thing.
Right. ISO might be our last resort in terms of boosting it, specifically because the more we boost our ISO, the more noise and grain is going to be in our shot. And we don't want to introduce noise and grain into our shot if we don't have to. Okay? So ISO typically is going to be your last resort. Okay? Can everybody remember that? Our policy when it comes to ISO is it's our last resort. Okay? So if your camera has a lowest ISO setting of 100, I would start here. Start your ISO low and then boost it if you need to. Okay? This is the number one problem I see amateur filmmakers and photographers deal with. This is the number one thing. You're shooting a picture or a video, and because you don't understand the exposure triangle, you have an ISO that is something like 10,000. All right? And your shot is all grainy and noisy when all you needed to do was change your shutter speed or change your aperture. Okay? So I really want you guys to understand this and just memorize this. ISO is the last resort. You only boost that when you need to. Okay? It's the last setting that I kind of tweak. All right?
And sometimes, just to know, sometimes, and this happens quite for me too, those little monitors on your cameras, you don't always see that you're introducing that grain. You say, oh, I'm gonna turn on my ISO, and you realize it's grainy when you get it in the post.
Exactly. And depending on what camera you have, your camera might be good at using high ISOs. Typically, the newer cameras and typically the more expensive cameras, you can shoot at a very high ISO and it still looks great. Okay? All right, guys. So we're gonna wrap up. Dave, I'm gonna do 10 more minutes, and I'm gonna just show them really quickly how it looks on the camera. I'm gonna hook the camera up to the monitor, and then we'll be done.
Thank you, Kyle.
I'll be right back. Let me get my charger.
Next week class, bring your mind and your bodies. Hopefully we don't get any more snow. It's tricky for me to predict what to do with the snow. But while we wait for Cal, can anybody tell me what are the three aspects of the exposure triangle to get the proper exposure? What's those three things?
Aperture, shutter, and
And
ISO.
ISO,
ISO. What's the first thing you set?
shutter speed,
Why is your shutter speed the first thing you select you set?
because it's the you just have to double the FPS.
Okay, that's your frames per second. All right, your shutter speed, your frames per second is the first thing you want to set. And what if you wanted to have a show shot for TV? What would be a good frames per second to do that?
30.
30. If I'm a client that says, you know what, this is my first film I want to make, I want it to be real cinematic. What am I going to, what's as you're the DP, what are you going to suggest that I shoot my film at?
20.
24.
24, correctly. So once you got your frames per second selected, now what we're going to do is set up our what? Anybody remember what we set up next? If my frame per second is 24, and what's the very next thing we're going to set up? Quickly, he's back.
The shutter speed.
Shutter speed. If my frames per second is 24, what's my shutter speed going to hit? A good rule of thumb.
If it's 24, then it's gonna be 48.
Great. If I say, hey, your shot is too dark, I want you to speed up your shutter speed. And you got it at let's say, for example, you got it at a 1/12. What would I need you to do? Not that you would have your shutter speed at that. If your shutter speed is 1/12, I said it's too dark. I need you to speed that shutter speed up. What would you change it to? What would you do? Give me at least one number.
Change it back to 48.
Yeah, you can change 1/48. That's a good answer. Great, great, great. Last thing I wanted to ask you, what's the last thing that you work with that exposure triangle?
ISO.
ISO. What is the good rule of thumb? I don't know if Kyle mentioned that. What's the good rule of thumb for ISO? Did he mention that?
What's our policy when it comes to ISO?
Oh, always use it last. Last resort.
You use it last. A good native ISO to start with is now this is kind of something to keep in mind. Some cameras have what's called a native ISO, the ISO that they're best shooting at, and that's usually somewhere between 400 and down to 100. Somewhere between that. Some Blackmagic cameras have a native ISO at 800. I personally do not shoot at that, regardless of them saying, hey, my native ISO, the image looks the best, is what they're saying at 800. But because that is digital light, I always shoot less down, and then I try my best to never shoot above 800. Never. I never do that. But anytime I shoot downward, if I wanted that grain, I can always introduce it. So there's a native ISO, but that's the last thing. All right, Kyle, I'm shutting up.
All right, cool. All right, guys. I just wanted to show you guys really quickly on the camera how this is gonna look. Is everyone understands everything that we went over so far, as if you guys will be ready for a test next week? Does anyone have any questions before you guys, leave? Anybody?
I got one question, Kyle. Can you, before you leave, can you talk to the students about how they can, if you are accepting additional students to join your workshop, if you are, how could they eventually get in? That's just something to ask. That's my question. If you can talk on that, if you accepting new students or additional students.
All right, cool. All right, cool. All right, yeah, we'll go over that. Oh, I don't know why I was doing that. Maybe, yeah. Oh, it's on 99 on somebody was in here pumping. All right, cool. Let's try that now. All right, guys, I just wanted to show you guys really quickly. Can y'all see the screen? I feel like it got blurry or something. Oh no, that's just
We can see it.
all right, cool. All right, you guys can see the screen, right?
Yeah.
All right. So what did I say? Last week, once you get these exposure settings down pat, you'll be able to pick up any camera and get the proper exposure, right? This is why I hammer these settings into your brain so hard, okay? All right, so I see it's a lot going on the monitor here, but who can tell me what this number right here might represent? 29.97p. What number might that represent? Anybody know?
Pixel?
Not necessarily pixels. So if we round this up,
Oh, oh.
this would be what?
Frames.
Yes.
Second.
So this is 30 frames per second.
So why on there did they like the P?
Yeah. Dave, you remember what the P means on certain cameras? It'll say it'll give us the frame rate P. I don't know, I don't remember the exact
I don't know what that is, but that's your frames per second. I guess that they may be taking out your PFPS. They just per seconds. I don't know. I'm looking it up now. But
okay.
that is your what your
Frame.
point. Yeah, that's your frames per second.
So this is your frame rate, your frames per second. So this is 30. So let's just round it up. This is 30 frames per second. Why might we shoot 30 frames per second, Indira?
Sorry, can you rephrase the question again?
Why might we shoot at 30 frames per second on our frame rate?
Because of
What
what you're
situation?
shooting, like based off of what you're shooting,
And what would be shooting?
like something like reality TV or
Yes. Yep. All right.
And
So
just to tap into something real quick, Kyle, I forgot that stands for progressive
progressive.
versus interlace. Don't even worry about it going down.
Yeah, that's the
That's
one.
old technology. Interlace is old technology. P is just progressive. That's what that
Okay.
means. Progressive frame capturing.
Okay. So 30 or 29.97 is our frame rate. So right now we might be shooting like something like an event recap or a commercial or something for TV, right? So right now, this number right here represents our frame rate. What does this number right here represent? F3.5.
F-stop.
This is your f-stop, which is what?
Um,
What setting is that?
how wide
What-
or shallow?
How open or how close your what is? Your what? What's the setting? Shutter speed, ISO. What setting is this? It's measured in f-stops. Aperture. So this is your aperture, right? F3.5. Okay, so I'm changing my aperture. I'm opening and closing my aperture, okay?
Then when a camera will open and close your aperture, does something physically on the camera happen? Occur?
On the lens. So what is aperture? It's the eye of the what?
So you see it open and close.
On the lens. On the lens, you see your eye or your aperture opening and closing.
It's almost like the pupils when they dilate.
Yes, exactly. Like your pupils when they dilate. So right now, I'm wide open on this lens, 3.5. Look at our shot. This is wide open. What happens when I close my aperture down? It gets darker, okay? The more you close your aperture, the less light. Okay? Aperture also affects what? What else does aperture
Depth of
affect?
field.
Depth of field. Thank you. All right, let's look at that real quick. I'm going to swap out lenses. Typically, you want to turn your camera off before you swap lenses, but how's our shot look?
It's too close.
It's blurry. All right, so let me focus on something. Let me focus on
It's not even. Yeah, there you go. Nope.
I'm about to put Justin on the spot. How's our shot look?
It looks nice.
Looks nice, right?
It depends on what.
Is this a shallow or deep depth of field, guys? Everybody, shallow or deep? This is a shallow.
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 This is portrait mode on your iPhone. Is my aperture wide open or closed down? Everybody.
Close down. Wait, wide open.
Open.
The more open your aperture, the shallower your depth of field. We don't see anything going on in the background. Is my hand blurry or sharp? Is my hand blurry or
Blurry.
sharp? This is a shallow depth of field, meaning only a little bit is sharp. Okay? And we're achieving that look by having a wide open aperture. Let's change our aperture. Let's close it down. Let's go f13. Okay? I'm going to brighten it back up. How does my hand look? How does my hand look now?
Clearer.
It's sharper, right? Is our aperture closed down or opened up right now? Did I close my aperture down? I closed it down. What happens when we close down our aperture? It's less light, but also what? It affects what? We get a deeper depth of field. We get a deeper depth of field. That means we can see more in the background. More things are sharp. Okay? So that's aperture. Okay? All right, so I'm gonna go back down here. Okay, so we have a very shallow depth of field right here. What number is this right here? Or what number is this right here, rather? 1/60. What does that represent?
Shutter speed.
Shutter speed.
There you go, Derek.
All right, cool. So this is our shutter speed, 1/60. Let's change it. Shutter speed. Cool. What am I doing to my shutter speed? Am I slowing it down or speeding it up? When I go from all the way down here? All right, what am I doing with my shutter speed?
You're slowing it down.
Speeding it up.
Oh.
The more we speed up our shutter speed, what happens? So let's say I'm starting here and I'm going this way. The more we speed up our shutter speed, the darker our shot gets, right? The more we slow it down, what happens to our shot?
It gets brighter.
It's brighter. All right, cool. What's a good shutter speed to start with while we're shooting 30 frames per second? What's a good shutter speed?
60.
60, 1/60. So this is a good shutter speed to start with. Let's look at the, let's close our aperture down a little bit. Let's boost this up and get it back. Let's look at my hand, guys. So I have a shutter speed of 60. How does the motion look?
A little bit blurry, too well.
Blurry, right? When I move my hand, you can't really see the details. My hand gets blurry, right? Let's speed up our shutter speed. Let's do something like this. No. All right, look at my hand, guys. How does the motion look now?
Clear and focused.
Why? What is it affecting?
Your motion blur.
Motion blur, okay? You guys get it? Everybody get it?
Yeah.
Shutter speed affects motion blur, aperture affects depth of field. Okay? Last thing, let's make this optimal. Okay, super bright, sorry. So this is the lowest that this particular camera goes. The lowest ISO is 320 on this particular camera. Most cameras is going to be 100. Okay? Let's look at the screen, guys. This is ISO 320. What happens when I boost my ISO? What happens when I boost my ISO? What's happening to our shot?
Right.
It gets super bright because we're boosting the camera's sensitivity to light, right? We're introducing artificial light. So what I can do is, let me change my aperture and balance it out. But now, what do you see on the screen? What's all this? What is this? What do you guys see on it? People on Zoom, you might not be able to see this part. Not reflection. What's happening? What's happening to our shot? It's what's going on in the background. You see that? It's blurry, but what? What's all this moving? ISO affects what? How much light, camera sensitivity to light, but it also affects what?
The grit.
Yes, the noise and grain. Is there a lot of noise and grain in this shot? I don't see why you're not looking at the screen. How much noise and grain is in our shot? Is it a lot or a little bit? Okay. Let's turn our ISO all the way back down. How much noise and grain is in our shot? Which one looks better?
This one,
Why?
because there's less noise and grain than the last one that you showed us.
Exactly, less noise and grain. Which one would you say looks like it's higher quality? This one. So what's our policy when it comes to ISO? Keep it what?
Last resort.
It's your last resort. Keep it low. We keep it low because the more noise and grain we introduce, the more we boost our ISO, the more noise and grain we're going to introduce. And that's going to lower the quality. Does that make sense? All right, cool. What's the first thing we do when we pick up our camera to shoot a video? What's the first thing we do? Shooting video. Choose your frame rate. Right now we have a frame rate of 30. We might choose 24, we might choose 60, depending on what we're shooting.
Did you say the ISO affects the resolution?
Yes. So say if I'm shooting 30, what do I know off the bat? What setting do I kind of already know I want to go to? Which one of these? Shutter speed. So number one, set your frame rate, depending on what you're shooting. Number two, set your shutter speed. A good shutter speed to start with is going to be double your frame rate. What else did we know off the bat? What do we know off the bat? We have a policy. We want to keep our ISO what?
Last resort.
So we want to keep that as low as possible. So number three, I'm going to set my ISO to the lowest number possible on here. The lowest number possible on this camera is going to be 320. And then from there, we can play around with our aperture. Let's say I want to shoot an aperture. I want my aperture to be f8 because I'm doing a wide shot that has multiple people in it. Let's say I want to use an aperture at f8, but now our shot is too dark. What can I do to get a proper exposure while keeping my aperture at f8? What setting do we change now? ISO. Now we go to our ISO and we boost it. Yeah, not too much. Okay, so that's what we call balancing out our exposure settings, okay? So the last thing, so what would be the problem of starting here and I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, that's too dark, that's too bright. Let me do this. the lighting looks good, but
You can see
the noise,
yeah, the noise.
our settings aren't optimal. Okay. So the first thing we do, set your frame rate. Second thing you do, set your shutter speed. Third thing you do, set your ISO to as low as possible. Then choose your aperture based on the depth of field and the lighting. And then you can come back to your ISO last. Okay. And this is what I typically do every time I pick up the camera to shoot video. Any questions? Any questions at all? Next week, you guys are gonna actually put your hands on the camera and get the proper exposure. Okay? Any questions? Yeah, everybody got notes that they can review.
That's good. That's good. Just one quick question for you guys. If everybody can kind of go around and let Kyle, Kyle, I appreciate you spending time. Tell me, just if you can all go around and tell me who feels best learning with hands-on as well as the information that we gather in person. I mean, versus when we gather from the demonstration. Like I can learn better from reading, or I can learn better from hands-on. Who feels comfortable in that space? Just tell Kyle
I'm
where
good with
where
both.
you are.
Yeah, I'm good with
I'm good
both
with
too.
both.
Yeah, I could do both.
Good. Okay. That's Derek, Justin, uh Andrea. She wasn't here last week. Morgan, I think Morgan was one of those folks that were in that other group too. And Ola, maybe too, maybe Ola. Okay. The reason I say this is because literally every single thing he described, he demonstrated at the very end of it in person. So once you get your hands on it, there will be a test next week, right? But once you, my camera on? Sorry, guys. Just so that you know, I'm in the DC area, and I decided to stay closer just because I have a car that may get stuck. I don't want to get stuck in the snow. So Kyle kind of took on the leadership role. But Lord's willing, we don't have any crazy weather next week. But he prefers in person demonstrations. Okay, great. So what I want us to do is I am a physical learner, but literally everything he discussed, he showed in real time. So the first thing I just want to wrap my head around is going, guys, when you come in next week, be prepared to kind of do some hands-on writing stuff, right? The second thing is we're going to say, all right, now I want you to physically take the camera and do it. So to kind of say I like how Kyle gives different scenarios. That's something that I'm learning that's really beneficial. So just thinking about, hey, what if you're in this situation? How can you process and what will be this way? And so I like how we do that. So be prepared for some of that. Okay. So maybe he and I, between the two of us, he and I might say, well, what about this scenario? Or versus what about this scenario? And then you kind of process, and that's going to help you in the long run. Once this is all done, it's really important, and I'm begging you guys to walk away with is how do you connect this logic to your films? Okay. That's my last thought. How do you connect this logic to the films that you're going to create? Okay, guys. All right, let's do it. Let's give Kyle a great hand, guys. Let's give him a hand, guys. Really, really, because he doesn't have to be doing this. He doesn't have to. He has a whole bunch of other stuff to do in his job, and he's making time because, to be honest, I like how he explains, and I'm being very transparent. The way he explains it is very patient and clear. I have struggles with that, and so especially the patience part. So to have him do that and take the lead is really a blessing. So thank you guys, and I will see you guys next week. Okay. All right. Give
Thank
yourself a
you.
hug and tell yourself you're valuable and you're loved. See you next week, guys.
Thank you.
See you
Bye.
All
next
right,
week.
bye. All right, Kyle. Hey, Kyle,
Have a
I'm
good
gonna end
day.
the meeting. Hey, Kyle,
All right.
am I here?
Yeah.
I think that's skate and then weather, bro. Insanity.
Thank you, Cal.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
All right, brother. I see. Hey, Kyle, I'm creating a Zoom link now for
For
documentary
Doc.
class. Okay.
All right, cool.
All right, brother.
All right.